Hi, everyone, and welcome to this month's edition of The Benchmark to talk about agricultural commodities and developments and the prices of them. I'm Peter Story. I'm the head of prices. I'm joined by Lee Bridget, who's head of food retail and manufacturing. How are you doing today, Lee?
Good, Peter. How are you? Happy New Year.
Good. Yes. Happy New Year. Merry Christmas as well. And yeah, being on the east coast of the US, you're not currently under 5 feet of snow. Is that right?
5 inches of snow. It's not
Oh,
quite
just
as
5 inches. Oh,
dramatic. Not as
okay.
dramatic. But yeah, it's currently snowing outside.
Okay, well, hopefully it doesn't get too bad. But talking about dramatic, certainly 2024 was quite dramatic for a lot of agricultural commodities, a lot of highs, a lot of lows. I mean, Lee, looking to 2025, what exactly have you been? I mean, I know you've been looking at Brazilian sugar a lot lately. So what exactly is going on there right now as we're entering the new year?
Um, well, yeah. Before I talk about sugar, I will say a couple years ago, I was speaking to one of the more senior people on our team, and he said, "Man, he's like for the longest time." Agricultural commodities was just this boring place and it was always the same cycle. And for most of my career, and then the last couple of years have just it's like everyone wants to talk to me now.
Exploded.
So yeah, it seems it really, I mean, we hinted at this or mentioned this at various times. I mean, we for a combination of reasons, just volatility is just more normal. And again, we are seeing our customers all find ways to navigate it. So I mean, the world is adapting. But yeah, so sugar. Sugar's been very volatile the last couple of years. We had the droughts in Thailand and other parts of Asia, which hit production. India limited its exports. We had drought and then some badly timed rains hurt production for like sugar beets in the EU. We just saw a lot of weather-related challenges. Um, and then over the last couple of years, Brazil has stepped up and kind of been the main supplier in the world. If you weren't paying attention to Brazil before, you certainly are now. I mean, their exports have been incredible for a lot of these major products. Um, but they've had some drought issues recently. There were wildfires there, which hit, huge swaths of sugarcane plantations, so that caused a surge in prices again. Um, and then seasonally, right now we're kind of moving into the Brazilian off season, so we'll probably see some, higher prices in the immediate this quarter, but we think that with the weather improvements in Asia, weather is improving in Brazil, by kind of mid 25, we should hopefully see that, sugar prices start to ease.
Yeah, I mean, certainly compared to other softs, sugar's not been nearly as bullish as like cocoa and coffee. Is that right?
I don't think you could get much more bullish than cocoa or coffee right now. I mean, I think part of that too is, I mean, coffee has also has been due to the same weather challenges in Brazil. Um, cocoa is production is so concentrated in West Africa, and just the weather there has been a big challenge. And then, as you and I talked about in previous videos, there's some issues with fertilizers, and there's some issues with aging, the ages of plantations there. I mean, there's a couple other things, but really the weather there has just been significant, a huge factor.
Because, I mean, really 2023, 2024, the La Nina, which the world experienced, was pretty intense, from what I understand. And I mean, even now, we're still in a little bit of a La Nina, but it sounds like we're going to be moving out of it as we move into 2020, well, firmly into 2025. So that should, draw a bit of respite, I suppose, for a lot of farmers, both in West Africa and I guess Southeast Asia, certainly for coffee. But then, I mean, for like cocoa trees and for coffee bushes, it takes quite a long time for farmers to react to these developments, just because obviously, if you're going to plant in response to high prices, it takes what, 3, 4 years really before you start to get a even half decent crop from these plants. So really, there's not an immediate sign of a come down following the big highs of 2024. Would you say that's fair?
Yeah, I mean, the come down for these products, to use your term, is going to be it's a gradual process. I
Mhm.
mean, part of the reason we saw cocoa, for example, I mean, we had 3 years of a cocoa deficit. where, world demand is outpacing supplies, drawdowns in stocks. Um, and we're looking at now a fourth one. So I mean, it will take years to kind of for those supplies to gradually recover. And one of the things too is, we had input costs and fertilizers and things like that come, following the Russia's invasion of Ukraine. We had demand kind of really ramping back up around the world as we came off of COVID and kind of the economic bounce back from that. So I mean, the situation got tight anyway, and then we've had all these weather problems.
Yeah.
So it's just, I mean, it's a very um, because we haven't seen really demand get hit that hard. I mean, one of the
Mm.
kind of surprising things with cocoa is how, grinding activity throughout the world. I mean, we haven't seen it come down very much compared to how much prices have gone up.
Mhm.
We certainly thought that you would see demand weaken more than it has. So it's just going to it's just going to take years for
Yeah.
price for supplies to catch up to where demand is.
And you really start to see every now and then, a bit of a drop in like the Robusta futures or the cocoa futures markets. It might last a month or something like that. And I think there's often speculation of, oh, this is the tipping point, perhaps. But then, sure enough, it just jumps straight back up again. So yeah, you can really see that the demand is still there. There's no real let up. And as you're saying, it doesn't really seem like the customers have been, well, on at the end of the chain have really been hit by these big price. Well, certainly the full extent of these price hikes, really, have they?
Yeah, so we saw a lot of when prices surged at the beginning of 24, a lot of um, cocoa, processors and companies had coverage through about, the middle of the year. And then we saw prices easing a little bit, and then they picked back up again recently. So actually, a lot of the pressure hasn't hit downstream yet. It's been because there was a lot of coverage and protection, and we've seen kind of some short coverings. I mean, the volatility in futures markets isn't all going to make its isn't going to all of it work down to the price of a chocolate bar. But we still haven't really seen the effects fully hit the retail level yet. So I mean, we'll probably still see those prices come up this year. Um, I mean, cocoa is probably going to stay tight, and we're looking at years again to for those markets to normalize.
Absolutely. And just changing the subject slightly, I mean, and well, sticking with the theme of bullish markets, how are things in oilseeds at the moment? Certainly for things like palm, it
Yeah,
seemingly
palm's been a weird
incredibly
one lately. So yeah, there's some structural problems with palm oil production, aging plantations, um, and we've really seen, with some shortages and some production problems this past year, we've seen palm oil prices surge. And then some of that also was driven by Indonesia's biodiesel mandates, and some uncertainty around that. Um, so what we actually saw was palm oil was actually trading at a premium over soybean oil, which is very, very unusual. Um, so if you're interested in kind of these long-term challenges in palm oil production, we have a white paper that our vegetable oil analyst put out a couple months ago that's really great. We'll put a link to that in the description for this. Um, so we've seen now the biodiesel mandates in Indonesia are um, now set to come in. They're going to be introduced more gradually, so that's eased some of that pressure. And we are seeing, South America looks like it's going to have a good, as if weather cooperates, they'll have a very large soybean oil crop. Production should increase seasonally. Production is for palm oil is year round, but there's still kind of high and low production seasons. So we should see those markets correct. Soybean oil, palm oil should move back below soybean oil. Um, and then while just to round out vegetable oils, sunflowers had some weather problems, so that'll stay higher until we have kind of some improvements on production there. And then really rapeseed oil and canola oil, the demand there for crushing for biodiesel has just been really strong. Um, so we should see some easing as we go into this year. But yeah, it's just been kind of a weird one to close out 24 with the palm oil situation.
Absolutely. And just going slightly more niche in terms of oil seeds, how are things in olive oil? I mean, obviously that's also had its own quite unusual year or unusual couple of years, but is the supply situation there getting any better?
I mean, they're still elevated from where they were a few years ago, but yeah, olive oil has improved quite a lot. I mean, they had a bumper crop in Spain this past year, which really, I mean, really brought things kind of back to normal.
Mhm.
Now, again, I mean, some of these prices you're coming off an inflationary period. You prices will probably settle somewhere above where they were 4 or 5 years ago, just because the overall price levels in the economy are higher now. Um, but yeah, those markets are moving lower. Um,
Mhm.
we could, of course, if we see some severe weather challenges, that would obviously is kind of a looming risk we're monitoring, especially with, climate change and how much more frequent these kind of severe droughts and
Mhm.
things are going to be. But yeah, olive oil has definitely started to come down following
Good to
the
hear.
yeah
On a
the
personal
situation in
note.
Spain.
And lastly, Lee, I just wanted to go over to wheat. Obviously, prices there have, I wouldn't go so far to say has been in the gutter, but they've been pretty stagnant for quite some time. Big reason for that has been Russia just keeping the market pretty well flooded in cheap wheat. It seems like maybe there's been a bit of a shift in policy in Russia. Are you able to talk a bit more about that?
Sure. So yeah, so I mean, obviously, I mean, again, we saw this massive surge in 22. Prices come down over the course of, latter 22, 23, and then we've seen kind of this random bits of volatility all over the place last year. Um, so yeah, prices were low for quite a while. Russia there was just so much wheat coming out of Russia. It just kept everything down. Um, this Now as we move into next year, I mean they had some bad weather in the Black Sea region this past year. Sunflower oil, sunflower was hit, wheat was hit. Um, so now what we're seeing is Russia's announced this new export quota for the first half of 25, and it's about two-thirds of what their exports were in 2024. So it's been a bit of a bullish pressure on markets, but I think markets are still digesting what the overall quantity of wheat the market needs is. With prices being lower, consumption was expected to be higher. You know, where, if prices tick back up, how much that, affects consumption. U.S. exports have been better than expected. Um, the euro has weakened a bit, which is making their exports more competitive with the Black Sea. Wheat really is kind of it's a mixed market right now, and our current projections put it moving mostly sideways
Yeah.
through 2025.
Yeah, it certainly doesn't seem like there's much pressure in either direction, even with the recent changes to Russian policy. So yeah, certainly will be an interesting one to keep monitoring in 2025.
Yeah, I do think we're again, like I said, this is some of these kind of markets where things have gone crazy. It takes years to get out of that. So, and as anyone who looks at anything knows, I mean, these markets don't move in a straight line. So even when it's coming down, it's still bouncing its way down, so to speak. I think the big thing too, just on the volatility front is for us. I don't want to speculate too much, but the macro and some of like Russia's policies, the biodiesel mandates in Indonesia, there's a lot of those things that are still kind of looming over markets. I mean, I think the incoming U.S. presidential administration and potential for trade spats. I mean, we saw in 2018 U.S. soybean exports were hurt quite a lot by that. Um, Whether, if that happens again, we would expect U.S. exports to get hit, which would, reshuffle things globally. And then, the dollar is still really strong, which is, for example, like, the euro, EU wheat exports being more competitive, US wheat exports, we expected, with Russia having a worse crop, that the US would step up. So far that's been happening, but if the dollar stays really strong, that's obviously a dynamic that we're watching as well. So there's certainly a lot of things are gradually improving, I would say, but we still have a lot of recipe for volatility here.
Yeah. And then on the figurative other side of that coin in Brazil, obviously the real's been so well inexpensive compared to the dollar in the past year that that's really helped with those Brazilian exports of things like sugar. And hopefully that does continue for the near future to
Yeah, I
keep
mean,
them
we've seen it.
in check.
It started to get stronger. You've seen some of those countries, they're like Brazil, Turkey certainly is their monetary policy is still tightening. Which should strengthen their currencies. We've seen the real strengthen a bit. So yeah, like I said, that's still the big thing to watch. And yeah, I mean, we have the central banks in the US and Europe are into a cutting cycle. Inflation, it wouldn't, as we've seen in previous episodes, it doesn't take much for inflation to get going again. So, yeah, there's certainly a lot that we're watching this year, even though everything
Absolutely.
looks cautiously optimistic right now.
Yeah. Well, a lot to look forward to in 2025. And yeah, I'm sure that we'll be watching very, very closely on all sides of our analysis teams. Well, thank you very much, Lee, as always, and hope you have a very good start to 2025. And thank you, everyone at home. I also hope that you have a very good 2025 ahead. Thanks.
Cheers, Peter.